So it is a great pleasure to have Catarina Cardoso with us today. Catarina is Portuguese Chilean. I just found out that she's half Chilean. Catarina has a very interesting background in geography and economy. She studied economics at the Universidade Nova in Lisbon, in Portugal. And then she did geography at the University of Cambridge and her PhD at the Department of Geography in the London School of Economics. So it's a very interesting blend of economics and geography. Right now, she's focusing more on energy policy and institutional, environmental, and behavioral economics, which is another fascinating topic. But she's here with us today because Catarina published this book titled The Extractive Reserves in Brazilian Amazonia, which is, I think, the best source in English on the Brazilian extractive reserves, if any one of you is interested in learning more about them. And it's a great example, I feel, of how a forest can be managed sustainably, but at the same time, provide a community-based economy and preserve the forest and actually maybe even enhance it. So it's a great pleasure to have you with us, Catarina. We would love to learn more about what you have learned about the extractive reserves and also what future you see for them. And with that, I'm going to let you share your screen. I'm going to mute myself.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It is a real pleasure to be able to be here. And I hope I can share the screen. Let me just try. Hello, can you, I can only see the screen now. I can't see anybody else. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thanks for letting me know. And can you also see the slides?
We cannot see the slides yet. Sorry. Just realized
okay, because here there was a blank for a while and I couldn't see anything. And now I only see the slides. Do you mind if we just wait maybe for a minute to see if they show?
Oh, that's strange. Let me see. So you already shared your screen already?
Yeah.
Oh, because I can't see your screen. Can anyone else see the screen?
Okay.
No.
I'll just do it again. I've just done escape.
Okay.
Okay. I did try it out early on, so I'll just.
And in the meantime, I'll make sure that you are co-host and that you're being able to share it. Yes.
It says here one participant can share at the same, or one participant can share at a time. And all participants can share, so that should be fine.
Okay, now we can see it. Perfect.
Okay, I think the problem might be if I actually put it on slideshow.
Let's see. If you press that.
Can you still see?
We can see it perfectly well,
brilliant.
Catarina. That's wonderful.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Really good. No problem. So, okay, so I'll get started so that everybody has time to talk and questions and everything else. So, what I want to discuss here is really about some observations based on the research and the book about the linkages between local resource management and global environmental issues. And these global environmental issues being, at the time, it was deforestation, and it was the start of the concerns about climate change. It's quite interesting because at the time, the whole thing about greenhouse gases was still talked about, but only a few people knew about it. It didn't have the same sort of wide public support that it has now. But deforestation was very big, and so was biodiversity as well. So let me just go to the next. Yeah. So this is basically just to show you. Sorry, I just got the wrong. Here, let me see. Can you see my cursor here? Yeah. Okay. So basically, this is just to show where. So this you can see. Brazilian Amazonia is. You can see the line here that separates from other countries, and Rio Branco is here. And so the reserve where I did the research is the extractive reserve Shiki, and which is in the state of Acre. This here is the state of Acre, and is somewhere there. Just to locate, there are about 75 reserves in Brazil. So this research was done a long time ago. I found this picture in a box, and no digital camera. So, but I just put it there to give you an idea of how the forest, I don't know how many of you have been in the forest, but it is pretty amazing. And after a while, you find your way around. But the path, as you can see, this is a path. You can hardly see anything. So this is sort of the light that's coming from there. And this is the path. And I couldn't find one with the rubber trees, but the ones with the rubber trees are not too different. And so the rubber tappers need to basically walk through here, and they will know where they are. And I'll talk a bit more about how they are organized and everything. So my work was very much based on the theory of collective action and institutional choice, Elinor Ostrom. So while other researchers, they talk more about the politics and actions, so political aspects of it, this is very much focused on the institution. So how property right institutions are developed, whether common property rights institutions are sustainable or not. Now, because this theory tends to focus very much on the resource and on the use of the resource, I also looked at the literature on environmental action and participation, which looks more about how local communities interact with the wider socioeconomical context. So this is based on a case study approach in which I was for about 5 months in the Amazon, traveled to the extractive reserve Shiki, interviewed rubber tappers quite extensively, and then also had some expert interview with national, regional and local policymakers. So I'll talk about, first I'm going to talk about property regimes resulted from a combination of factors, the characteristics of the resource itself. Anna, I think something is wrong because I can hear my recorded voice.
I'm trying to figure out what happened.
So the rubber tappers have been living.
It says oh.
When they migrated from other regions of Brazil to work on large rubber estates.
Someone has the microphone open or something. I'm not sure how to control this. Maybe. Okay, I think it stopped now. I'm sorry about that, Katarina.
Yeah, I can still hear it though.
I'm sorry?
I can still hear it.
And what caused that? I'm trying to figure out, like I'm looking at everyone has the microphone off right now.
Let me see if I stop my microphone.
I think that maybe there's a recording in your computer that was turned on by mistake, probably. Now we can't hear it anymore.
Okay. All right. Apologies about that. So let me just go back. So yes, so as I said, so I'll talk a little bit about the rubber tappers and the development of the reserves. Then I talk about how is the structure in the extractive reserve Shiki. And then I'll go straight in a way to the conclusions, which is the interaction of local, national, and international factors. So the rubber tappers basically they've always been embedded in a wider context, and they arrived in the Amazon in the late 1800s in the context of the rubber boom. So basically, at the time, there was a considerable demand for latex, especially for the automobile industry. And so people from the northeast of Brazil, usually poor peasants without land, they arrived in the Amazon and started working in very large rubber estates under systems of debt peonage. So basically, they were like semi-slaves in a way, slaves because of the debt they had. Now, in the 1920s, it was the end of the rubber boom for an interesting reason, which was that rubber plantations started to develop in Southeast Asia. So they had tried to develop rubber plantations in the Amazon, but it was not possible because of the environmental. There was basically a plant that it just didn't work, a plant fungus. But the thing is that this plant fungus was not in East Asia, so there they could have the plantations, and plantations were much more profitable. So with this was the end of the rubber boom, and many the rubber barons left, many rubber tappers left as well, but others actually stayed by themselves, quite forgotten really, because at the time the Brazilian government was not that interested in the Amazon. And they started developing their own institutional arrangements to manage the forest. And so between 1920s and the 1960s, they were very much left to their own devices. They started developing common property based on the same system of the rubber state. Now, in the 1960s, government policies attracted newcomers to the region, not just cattle ranchers, but also people in search of land, because land was freely available. Roads were opened very close to what is now the extractive reserve Shiki, which basically, so the result of the rubber state being made more accessible, and also there being so many incentives for more other kind of economic activities, led to many people arriving there, and sort of and also acquiring legal property rights, because the rubber tappers did not have legal property rights, while the newcomers, they often did. So you had a huge conflict, very, very violent, in which many rubber tappers just left because they felt they didn't have the rights to the land. And those that stayed were often expelled at gunpoint. So it was very, very violent. Now, in about the 1970s, mid-1970s, started a peaceful movement of resistance, the standoff, which actually saved large amounts of forest. I'm thinking if I have here the number. This strategy was very good. So, for example, one reference is that they basically about 1 million of hectares were saved just through these standoffs, in which rubber tappers will just stand and basically would not move until the people working for the for the cattle ranchers would leave. Then in the 1980s, you have the global interest or international interest in environmental issues, and deforestation becomes very important. There are some reports published, like one, for example, that says that the Amazon contributed 5% of carbon emissions. So there is concern with climate change. There is the biodiversity, there is the rights of local people. There is a different perception of local communities. They are not universally seen as the destructors of the environment anymore, but there is more and more voices that say, well, actually, they help preserve nature, which is of global value. So all in all, we have then basically the creation of the first extractive reserves in 1990. And then there are 4 phases through this. And in total, as I'm saying, there are about 75 extractive reserves nowadays, some of them federal, some of them state reserves all over Brazil. So this is the background. Now here, I wanted to show you this map. It was really difficult to get at the time, I remember. And now this time trying to take the picture and make it look good was again a challenge. So I've made it a bit bigger, because what I want to show you here is that basically, so this is the extractive reserve. As you can see, very large area. And the reserve is formed by several rubber states. So these were the former rubber states that were created in the late 19th century. So each rubber state has about 130 to 700 square kilometers, and with a high concentration of rubber trees. Now, each rubber state, here you've got the names of some of the rubber states. Now, these rubber states, there's these limitations here, basically, there are just on paper. In the forest, you can't really see the difference between two rubber states. They look exactly the same. And they can be jointly used by several individuals, but only as long as the activities don't require the removal of the forest cover. So in that sense, they are common pool resources. I don't know how familiar you are with the term, but common pool resources are basically resources that can be used jointly, but only up to a certain point. So not like public goods that can be used jointly, point. They can be used jointly, but only up to a certain point. And they are normally very large, so exclusion is not impossible, like in the case of a public good, but it is quite difficult. So you have joint use and up to a point, and exclusivity problems. Now, so these forests can be used jointly, and if too much latex is extracted, basically the tree will dry up. So you need to also leave the trees rest. They need to have some periods of rest. The rubber tappers, they walk along the trails, making cuts in the trees, and then later collect the latex. So each rubber tapper in one of these states, and now in the reserve, they basically will have several rubber trails, which are the trails where they walk collecting the rubber. They'll have a stand. They have an area to process the rubber, and they'll have a house, and these the rubber stand. The trails are intertwined with each other, so you can't really divide them. But the rubber tappers know perfectly well which trails belong to whom, and the trails can be traded. They are not defined in terms of area, they are defined in terms of the number of trails and the quality of the trails, the rubber trails. So basically it is indivisible, the area. So if we now look at the reserve, we then have a common pool resource in which it is possible but difficult to exclude people from the reserve. So the boundaries don't correspond to natural boundaries, and they are not boundaries established by an informal institution, because the institution was the rubber state, and this extractive reserve has several rubber states. So there is no natural boundary, no cultural boundary. It's relatively arbitrary in a way. And the reason for having such a large area was because when the rubber tappers were fighting for their rights, they basically wanted to have protect other areas from being exposed to the same situation. So they asked to have as much as possible inside the reserve, protecting fellow tappers who had not participated in the struggle. The rubber tappers the trails are individual, you can say they are private property, but of course they can't cut the trees off. So they are private property as long as they use them sustainably. One thing is interesting as well is that the rubber tappers basically, they are quite isolated, and they are very concerned with their own states rather than for the area as a whole. So there is a mix of a community feeling, but at the same time, this is my land kind of feeling that you would find in other places. So both coexist. So this is to describe the area. Now, I don't know how much time I have left. Anna, I think
we started like 10 minutes late, so I would say 10 more minutes.
Okay. Oh, that's brilliant, actually. Okay. So I think in terms of my thoughts about this, yes. So I basically, if you have the opportunity to read the book, there is a chapter which explains how local, national, and international factors interacted in the development of the reserve. And then there is another section, which is how they all interact in the current characteristics of the resource, of the reserve. I couldn't go into the detail here, which is why I'm just talking now about basically the conclusions. So based on this research, I think one of the key points is really that the relationships between the local communities and the external context is not limited to a dispute over resources. So I think at the time I did the research, it was very much that you had local communities defending. So you had two sides. You had the one, the tragedy of the commons. Local communities cannot manage their own resources. And then you had the other side that would say, well, local communities can manage their own resources, and it is those coming, the outsiders, who actually destroy the resource. Looking at the extractive reserves, it's very clear that actually the relationship is much more complex than that. So the rubber tappers could not have developed their extractive reserve, for example, without, first of all, support on the ground from the church, the Catholic Church. Priests from the liberation theology helped very much in terms of, for example, setting schools, in terms of teaching about social action. There was a union, which is sort of partly rubber tappers, but partly union from outside the reserves. Then later you have basically international agents as well, who they help in terms of, for example, campaigning for some development projects that were quite damaging for the rubber tappers, for them to stop. So by themselves, the rubber tappers could not have developed an extractive reserve, and they couldn't have had the protection they have now. So that was very important. And in terms of their development, the same thing. So on one hand, the development is related to the fact that there was demand for rubber, which is what brought them to the area in the first place. The end of the rubber boom, basically the start of rubber plantations elsewhere, meant that they were able to develop their own institutions. A second factor that is very important in the establishment of the reserve is the actual characteristics of the resource. So the forest is quite unique in the sense that it is indivisible. So you can have different rubber trails, but at the end of the day, the forest as an ecological area cannot be divided. The moment you start taking out one part of it, the rest also gets affected. So it is indivisible. So it's not just that it provides an environmental service worldwide, is also the fact that the forest itself on the ground, you can't really divide it. The resources are also, for example, water. All the rubber tappers in a different stand, they may use the water from the same place. The same thing with fruit trees. So the characteristic, the indivisibility of the forest is really very important. The regional context and the international trends. So one thing, for example, things like the start of democracy in Brazil, and also the setting up of governmental agents with a very genuine interest in the protection of these communities and in the protection of the Amazon, again, played a big role in the area. Now, in terms of the future and the sustainability of the reserves, yes, to a large extent, it depends on the capacity of these institutions to set up the rules and various mechanisms necessary, like conflict resolution mechanisms, monitoring mechanisms, which basically ensure the sustainable use of the resource. And at the time I was there, these mechanisms were not very strong. So you had a common property institution, but the mechanism in terms of making sure that if there is a problem, how it is addressed, they were not very strong. The rubber tappers were living in a sort of, let's say, weak common property organization. And there were outsiders trying to encourage them to develop stronger rules and stronger mechanisms. But the thing is that these kind of things, they really need to come from the community. Outsiders can help, but if they develop them for them, then the users themselves cannot adapt these rules. But the sustainability also of the reserves also depends on the economic opportunities available to the tappers. So the external context again, and this is really essential. And I did some reading in preparation for this about what's happening right now. And it's quite interesting, but basically the rubber tappers, before it was mostly rubber and Brazil nuts, and now they're actually diversifying. And they have small cattle ranching, for example. And they also, basically they start to have, and there are some areas which are used for ranching and used for other kind of products. They've tried fruit, but many of the fruit is quite difficult because it's not something that you can, you need fridges basically. And if you don't have fridges, it's very difficult. You need to transport them while they are still fresh. So it is quite limited in that sense. So my other thought about this was basically about the role of the state. So the state plays an absolutely key role in the survival of common property regimes. Just leaving them to their own devices is basically, it's very rare that they would be able to survive, especially when you have communities that actually they are to some extent integrated in international commerce. They don't live in isolation. They've never lived in isolation. They depend on international demand for their products. They depend on their ability to develop economic activities that will help them move out of poverty. So another thought is about that the rubber tappers, I remember when I studied, was quite interesting because they were very popular and the Amazon is very popular, but there were a number of cases of other communities also impacted by international developments, but without the same level of popularity because their resources are less well known. And then finally, I think I'd say that the conservation of the commons, I think, depends also on local users' ability to adapt to the changing external context. So in the 80s, the international interest in the Amazon was very beneficial for them. Yes, the context now is different, and their ability to adapt to that and to be able to be savvy like they were at the time will play a big role in terms of their future. So just to finish, so these are some current articles about extractive reserves. I can send them to Ana Maria so you can have a copy. So this one is in Portuguese, but this one is in English and this one as well. They're all very interesting, and particularly this one actually. And just to finish, I just want to show this picture. There are two pictures actually, which basically is so basically is the rubber tappers at the time. So this will be the house in the stand, and this is two different houses. So the population has slightly reduced. It may be because some people are leaving, but it also may be because there is the natality, fewer births. So that's also a reason. And yes, and they facing some economic difficulties, different from 20 years ago, but they still do. Anna, I think that's about the time, right?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katarina. Very, very interesting.
You're welcome.
I'm going to give you one of these Facebook claps. And I see that Chochi is already here. So okay. I guess that
I'll just take this out. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Katarina. That was wonderful. Very, very interesting. We will definitely discuss it at the end. Some important topics here. I'm
going to try to stop sharing. Yeah.
There, we can see you there right now. I'm going to go back here to the Chochi. Are you there somewhere in the matrix? Yes, there you are. I can see you now.
Hi.
How are you? Welcome, dear Chochi.
Hi, thank you.
Chochi is an Ecuadorian entrepreneur. She basically has been working for how long, Chochi, in Humans for Abundance?
Since 2019.
Since 2019. But basically, Chochi has started, she created a startup called Humans for Abundance that provides eco services, and she's supporting communities that are working on forest resurgence and other programs that have to do again with the community, with the creation and the sustainable perpetuation of community-based eco services. And what she's doing is fabulous. I know that firsthand. So Chochi, welcome. And please, are you going to show some slides? Would you like to share the screen?
Yes, I think
Okay,
so.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
make sure, let me see here. I want to make sure you're a co-host. Okay, make co-host. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm,
Let's try it.
ahí.
Perfect, we can see it. Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go.
Okay.
Rosa. Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah. ¿Cómo ves? Un second. Ahí puedes ver. Yeah.
Yes, perfectly well, thank you.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm María José Iturralde, my nickname Chochi. I am an Ecuadorian entrepreneur, as Ana María said. Thank you, Ana María, for inviting me. And we set up this social entrepreneurship called Humans for Abundance, with the idea of doing ecological restoration, which is different from reforestation, right? Ecological restoration, which means to bring back the whole ecosystem back, to bring back the ecosystem with all its biodiversity in the Amazon rainforest, or beginning in the Amazon rainforest. We also do a little bit in the Andes with the native forest there, but we're just beginning. Which means bringing back everything, all the flora and all the fauna. So it's quite tricky getting the seeds because, you know, we're not just bringing one type of tree is in certain hundreds of types of tree or species. So Ana Maria asked me to share what is it that we do. And then if we work with indigenous communities in the Amazon rainforest. So I thought I would present it from the point of view of Rosa, and show you guys her community and what they're going through and what is it that we're doing with them through their point of view. So the idea is to use ancestral knowledge to do the ecological restoration. So indigenous people know or have known for millennia how to keep the forest alive and the soil alive, especially. So we found when we started doing this project that colonialism and oppression, like so many centuries of colonialism and oppression, had instilled an idea or a belief in the indigenous communities that their methods were useless and that the Western ways were superior. So they've been forgetting and using less and less of their knowledge about how to keep the forest and use more and more of traditional agriculture. So this is what's happening in the Amazon. So let me tell you a bit more about Rosita. Rosita lives in the Sumaco area near one of the most biodiverse volcanoes that we have in the world, actually. And she lives under the line of poverty, according to our economic standards, right? Even though she has like 25 hectares of forest, I think, yeah, she manages. She doesn't produce enough food to live a healthy life, you know, with well-being. Her family is has all the pressures from the outside, from extractivism, and they suffer a lot from nutritional. How do you say? Well, they don't have a very nutritious meals. They only, when we entered 4 years ago, they only harvested yucca and plantain, and a few other things like peanuts and pineapple, but they didn't have a system for growing food in a healthy way. They would just cut the forest because this is what the government told them to do. They were forced by the government to actually. The government would say you have to use your land or work your land, otherwise they will take it away. So to work the land meant to actually clear the forest and plant some sort of monocrop culture. So this is what Rosita does. And she has all these pressures from the outside and her family. This is a satellite image from her community and other families that work with us. As you can see, it's in the Amazon rainforest, but you start to see the patches of deforested land. As you can see, the little patches of, so people clearing out the forest to plant monocrop cultures and extracted timber. So that's basically what communities like this in Ecuador and other countries of Latin America are faced with. The only way to make an income is to cut the trees and to plant a monocrop culture or to have cattle. In this area, they cannot have cattle because jaguars are still around and they actually eat the cattle. So it's a good thing, I guess. but otherwise, they still destroy the forest because that's what they've been taught for the last 4 decades, I think, or more. So these are pictures of how the community life looks like. They're people who want to send their kids to school, like us. They've been very westernized, and they need the resources to send their kids to school, to buy food from the trucks, because that's what they've been in the habit of doing instead of planting their own healthy food. So when we came 4 years ago, they used to spend 7 or to 75% of their income that they made from monocrop culture to buying food from a truck that came from the Andes with, carrots and lettuce and onions, which are products from the Andes and not from the Amazon. So they fell into the system, I guess. So lots of conflicts and pressures, as you probably talk about with Ana Maria. As the roads come to the Amazon, right, immediately timber extraction happens, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And then cattle ranching starts quickly, and then you can see here a picture of the naranjilla fruit. It's a tropical fruit. It's very, very harmful for the environment. They have to use a ton of chemical toxins to make it grow like that. And it's very harmful for human consumption. And they have to apply it various times a year for them to have that kind of crop or results. And then, of course, mining, right? So lots and lots of mining in the Amazon rainforest. And then, we have a very big illegal industry for timber extraction. So it's not at all regulated in governments like ours in Ecuador. We say we are, but we're not. I know names and last names of people who extract wood at night when nobody sees them, and basically police are paid so for them to. And that it's understandable, because a tree like that you see here in the picture might give them up to $3,000 if they cut them into planks and sell them. So that's all the money they know how to get. So and the intermediaries for the naranjilla are the only ones that come to these areas. So there's no really a lot of help from the government to provide another alternative. So basically, these are the alternatives they have to timber extraction or monocrop culture. So we created Humans for Abundance as a testing ground for an alternative way to make an income. So we thought that maybe local people like the ones that I'm presenting here to you in Rosita's community could sell ecological restoration as a service, sort of like a graphic designer selling their services to design a logo or something. They would sell the service of restoring the Amazon rainforest, their own lands. So this is what we're doing. We've been selling eco actions to people from the global north, and those eco actions come into these communities, and so they can stop all these harmful activities that I just mentioned, and they can turn their farms around and actually start rescuing their ancestral knowledge and their identity, and actually start valuing what they knew before for thousands of years, and rethinking or revaluing again what they used to know, which was the way to keep the rainforest as a food garden, as a food forest, because they used to grow the Amazon. Thousands and thousands of people, millions of people, I think that used to live in the Amazon for millennia, as I said, and harvesting and cropping trees that they didn't need and planting trees that they would need. So the most important, treating the soil, because it's really bad soil for agriculture. So unless you have a forest intact, the water can go in and the minerals and the nutrients can stay in the soil. If you cut the trees, the soil is good for 1 or 2 years and then nothing grows because the rain just washes all the minerals away. and all the nutrients. So this is a big problem in the Amazon because they've been instructed to clear the forests without knowing that they're killing their soils and the microbiome in the soils. So we started having workshops with them, like new conversations about how can they could turn into restorers and become proud entrepreneurs that offer this very important service to the world, which is to restore these essential forests that we need for our very survival. And we started talking about ecosystems with them and their own native language. And they scratched out our very Western world way of seeing an ecosystem like as a system of living beings. They scratched out the word, and then they put a better word or a phrase that says Yukanchi Kausai, which means our living energy. So we started learning from them how they see themselves or humans as just a tiny part of these forests and this living energy. They see the energy in it. So it was very interesting for us to learn and to see this vision and to start celebrating that, so they would value it themselves instead of valuing the Western ways as superior. So we started having these conversations with them and how we can start applying this knowledge again into the chakra system, which they used to have before. So here it is, pictures of the proudest restorers doing a job that they actually like doing, which is restoring their forest and living in their forest, but actually making money from it. So, so as I said, the chakra system that they used to have before looks very different from monoculture crops. Here's a picture from up from the satellite, from a drone, sorry. You can see different trees that they're growing in the food forest, and it doesn't look at all like a monocrop. But we did have to do with them lots of workshops on organic fertilizers. They didn't know how to make them. So we had to kind of join their knowledge with Western knowledge and join forces really to rescue the chakra system, which is what they've been doing for millennia, right? Like planting, I don't know, up to 50 or more products in the same hectare instead of just one. Now, when we came 4 years ago, they did have only like 5 to 10 products. They had forgotten how to use the chakra system to the 100% of their potential. So now they're inserting more and more products and different layers. As you can see in this photo, there's like a bottom layer maybe with pineapples, and then like a middle layer with plantains, and like maybe a top layer with some timber that they can extract later. So so we started bringing experts in permaculture, which are indigenous as well. And they started teaching them how to harvest microorganisms for their own forests, collect those microorganisms and put them in soil and reproduce them, so to recover degraded soils that basically have killed the microorganisms by using fertilizer. So how to reinsert these microorganisms back into the soil. So this is what we've been working. And then you can see here Jose with his chakra on the back, right? And you can see how it looks totally different from a typical coffee plantation, for example. And here you can see how he's learned to use the polyculture system, and where 3 economic activities or 3 economic products are mixed together in the same plot of land. So he has his coffee plantation. These are coffee plants. It's completely organic, and he uses the chickens to fertilize the soil, and they clean the soil underneath the coffee. But he also has some chuncho trees. You cannot see here, but trees that he would extract later for timber. They've been there for 10 years. So he's not mixing 3 or 4 commercial products at the same time. So instead of having a monoculture crop, now he's selling his chickens to his neighbors. He's consuming the eggs. His family's nutrition has gone up. His finances have gone up. And then the production of the coffee is really, really good. he has delicious coffee that is organic and it's sustainable and doesn't kill the soil. So it's been really, really successful seeing them reapply this and being proud. And as I mentioned before, they learn how to do the agriculture in the Amazon, because in the Amazon, you just can't dig a hole and just plant things. You have to create beds or elevated beds with biochar. So I'm sure you'll talk about Terra Preta with Ana Maria. But basically it's creating charcoal in a very specific way that uses very little oxygen. So it's very sustainable, and then it conserves all the carbon inside the biochar. So it doesn't really carbon into the atmosphere, it conserves the carbon, and it creates a very rich environment for the microbiome. So then you harvest microbiome from and find fungi from the forest that they still have, and they mix it with this biochar, and then you make these beds. And that's how they keep, that's how they're planting their food forests again, like bringing back the very rich soil into the degraded lands. I think that, I don't know, that's it. That's all. If you have any questions, I don't know if the questions go at the end.
That was wonderful, Chochi. Thank you so much. Our plan is to do the questions after the three of you speak. I don't know whether you had a chance to listen to Katarina, maybe?
A little bit, yeah.
And we have, let me see if Teresa is here already. That's incredible. And hopefully, Chochi, my students will be able to see Mushudakta very soon. So they will be visiting you guys very soon. Let me see.
Okay.
Are you there? I don't see Teresa among the participants. I wonder whether she had issues connecting.
Hola.
There she is, Teresa, un gusto.
Hola.
Bienvenida. Entonces, I was thinking, Chochi, if you don't mind stopping the screen. Exactly, perfect. So now we can see you, Teresa. Teresa is a Shuar. Correct me if I'm wrong, Teresa. A Shuar scientist who has been, like the Quichua with whom Chochi works with, has been doing ecological restoration projects for about 20 years, if I'm not wrong, Teresa. It's the first time that I have the pleasure to meet her. You will be, tú sí nos vas a dar la conferencia en español y tranquila, Teresa. Yo lo que voy a hacer es traducir lo que vas diciendo en el chat, porque la mayoría de los estudiantes que están aquí no hablan español, pero no importa, yo te apoyo con la traducción para que tú hables tranquila. Ahora, ¿quieren compartir la pantalla ustedes o quieren que yo comparta la pantalla y vaya cambiando las diapositivas? Sí recibí la presentación que me enviaste por Facebook.
Sí, eso era por si acaso, tal vez podemos desde acá.
Ya, perfecto. Entonces déjame asegurarme, Teresa, de que
Esperemos
puedes.
que todo funcione.
¿Cómo apareces aquí? ¿Bajo qué nombre? Para encontrarte, asegurarme que seas. Aquí te
Shiki.
puedo ver como Shiki. A ver, quiero asegurarme que puedas compartir la pantalla. Ya te encontré. Sí, porque estás ahorita como que, a ver, te voy a poner acá, co-host por si acaso. No deberías tener ningún problema. ¿Quieres intentarlo?
Ya.
Perfecto. Y bienvenida, Teresa. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí. Y for the students, I will be inserting the translation into English. Please, I apologize in advance because translating from Spanish into English is very difficult for me. I'm not as good as Google Translate. The AI is better by far, but I'll do my best. Listo, Teresa, muchas gracias. Yo voy a apagar mi micrófono y voy a estar escribiendo acá.
Ya. Ya puedo.
Ya estamos intentando. Momento. ¿Sí ven la pantalla? No.
No todavía.
Ya.
Por lo que veo, deberían poder compartirla. Vamos mirando aquí.
Voy a intentar de nuevo. Desktop 1.
A ver.
Compartir. Abrir preferencias. No sé, no está funcionando
¿No está funcionando?
o no sabemos cómo hacerlo.
A ver. Aquí hay un icono que dice Share Screen, que está
Sí.
justo en la línea de abajo. Ahí si le
Sí.
aplastas, ¿qué te sale? Debería salirte otra imagen con tu pantalla y le puedes dar un clic en esa, donde nos ves a nosotros.
Sí, solo que no sale así. No sé.
No
Aún
te está saliendo así. Qué raro. ¿Quieres que la comparta yo?
yo creo que sí, y no
Ya
es
la
así
hice.
tan detallado ni tan organizado. Más es para las fotos que Teresa quiere mostrar al grupo.
A ver, acá está, me enviaste la presentación. Si no me equivoco, no es esta. Downloads, déjame abrirla acá. Me enviaste dos, ¿verdad?
Sí, uno está en Keynote, otro está en PowerPoint.
A ver. Perdón, estoy aquí mirando. List. Tururú. Charla de Tere para Ana. Key. Y acá la otra es charla de Tere para Ana PowerPoint. ¿Quieres la que está en PowerPoint, Teresa?
Lo que más fácil sea para
Se puede
abrir.
abrir.
Ya, entonces lo voy a abrir en PowerPoint, ya lo estoy abriendo.
Sí.
Apenas esté abierta la voy a compartir. Ok, acá está. Perfecto. Entonces aquí debería ser capaz de compartir esto. Ok, can someone let me know if you can see the screen now?
Correcto.
Ya.
Ok, perfecto. Entonces yo voy a... Ahora lo que no veo es el chat, entonces no voy a poder traducir. No, acá está el chat. Si abro el chat, ¿lo ven también? ¿Molesta esto?
No hay problema.
Ya lo que voy a hacer acá es ponerle en formato de presentación. Ya no he usado PowerPoint en años, es acá, ¿verdad? Acá. Ok. Y voy a mantener el chat acá para poder... listo. Ok. Listo, Teresa.
Ya, ok. Bueno, gracias Anita por compartir con todos y para todos los oyentes también, ¿no? Ya, a mí me toca el tema de Shuar Aja. Ya. Shuar Aja es un lugar, un espacio donde que las mujeres deciden el lugar, el sitio para poder ver, y es un lugar limitado, no es como para destruir todo el bosque, no es como para poder ayudar, no, en la parte muy primordial, especialmente en lo que es la sobrevivencia en la cultura de nosotras, no. El Ahashuar consiste antes y después, ya, consiste de que es primero el Campundín, ya, es la selva donde que todas las mujeres se reúnen en busca de materiales para encontrar cerámicas, para poder hacer las cerámicas. Entonces ahí van, pues dentro del bosque colectan muchas plantas porque hay un bosque que es el Campundín, ¿no? Campundín es tierra tariñat y nunque, en donde quiero decirles de que Campundín es selva grande y tierra de los ancestros. Así lo concebimos, ¿no? El Aja Shuar, Shuar Aja, decimos, ¿no? Ambas partes podemos decirlo, tomarlo como hacemos, ¿no? Consiste en que Es una huerta donde que ya, a ver, en el proceso, hacemos la aja, es la huerta donde que nosotros estamos queriendo sembrar, seleccionar el lugar, el espacio, sembramos los tubérculos, o sea, ahí hay todas las especies, las variedades que tenemos, en especial también las plantas que han sido ya, muchas de las veces las plantas son silvestres, ¿no? Y son domesticadas por las mujeres, en especial porque las mujeres son especialmente los que seleccionan las semillas, dentro como del bosque y del huerto también, ¿no? El aja Shuar es una huerta sagrada, ¿no? Sagrada decimos porque ahí se cultivan con la sabiduría de nuestros ancestros, de nuestras madres, abuelas. Y ellos son los que nos transmiten el saber con todo el anen, con los ritos sagrados, para poder nosotros, que todas las plantas cultivadas sean muy fructíferos, para que den mucha comida, o tengan muchas hojas para las verduras, porque mayormente son plantas que realmente traemos del bosque primario. Cuando hacemos la huerta aja Shuar, nosotros colectamos, domesticamos y cultivamos en esta parte en la huerta. Ya, la mayor parte son ya domesticadas, que ya se manejan en el huerto en Shuar aja. Aja se entiende también aja Shuar, donde que se imparten los saberes y los conocimientos en el manejo de los huertos, en el manejo de las semillas. Como decir, nuestras abuelas son guardianes de las semillas, porque ellos lo guardan las semillas, nos enseñan a seleccionar las semillas para poder sembrar para los tiempos que ya vienen en la época de la siembra. Aja Shuar también es un lugar llamado donde que las mamás preparamos la aja Shuar para poder de que allí van a venir nuevas futuras generaciones. Es como decir, el Shuar aja es donde que viene un bebé que va a nacer en la huerta, donde se cultivan las plantas para poder dar de alimentar a nuestros hijos y también para sanar nuestros males. Entonces tenemos muchas diversidades de plantas para poder sanar cuando necesitamos poder usar las plantas, como decir, las plantas medicinales, plantas comestibles, plantas que son de uso cosmético, de muchas especies. La mujer Shuar colecta todo tipo de plantas. Pueden ser tóxicas, plantas que realmente son utilizadas para para usos, especialmente para animales, para el ser humano, y también se cultivan plantas para dar de comer a los animales que los domestican. Entonces, aja Shuar es un lugar, un espacio donde que la nueva generación nace y ya empieza a emprender sus actividades diarias y cotidianas. ¿Ya? Y podemos cambiar también.
Si puede poner el siguiente.
Siguiente.
Sí, ahí está.
Bueno.
¿Una más?
Sí, ahí estamos hablando. Ahí está una madre donde que ella enseña a sus nietos dentro de la selva, está colectando semillas, está transmitiendo sus saberes. Son nietos que realmente reciben, ¿no?, los saberes de la abuela. Entonces, los saberes ancestrales son transmitidos de padres a hijos y a nietos. Entonces, eso es lo que le practica las mamás abuelas. Y podemos ver también allí en la huerta cultivando y está también sacando las plantas para poder usarlos cuando ya hay necesidad, puede ser de una enfermedad, ya están esos ya cultivados en la huerta, pero es la facilidad de cultivar en la huerta es para poder dar el uso cuando se necesita las plantas. Entonces ahí vemos que también la mamá saca el tubérculo, podemos ver otra foto más también ahí que tenemos. Es la selección de semillas, son plantas que son primitivas, que yo estoy viendo ahí la mamá, abuela, está sacando, seleccionando para seguir sembrando en otras huertas, como decir, y a guardar las semillas que realmente seleccionadas, ¿no? Normalmente, ¿quién es la que selecciona el lugar, el espacio para hacer la huerta, Shuar? Son las mujeres mismo que seleccionan y después de la selección ellas diseñan la huerta, donde van a cultivar las plantas, estas plantas medicinales, estas plantas comestibles, estas plantas que son de uso emergente. Entonces, es diseñada por las mismas mujeres que ellos van a dar el uso y tener muy cerca las plantas. Bueno, la Shuar es una actividad diaria. Y también la actividad cotidiana de todos los niños y de todas las mamás, de todas las abuelas que ya se vienen haciendo hace miles de años, ¿ya? Entonces, viene sembrando todo tipo de plantas, colectando y sembrando todo tipo de plantas, en especial dando la garantía es la alimentación diaria, ¿ya? Especialmente cultivando los tubérculos para que los niños puedan consumir en la huerta. La mujer Shuar se dedica mucho en implementar múltiples especies, tanto como frutales, tanto como tubérculos, que los niños puedan, en el momento que están limpiando la huerta, en el momento que están cosechando, los niños, los jóvenes, las mamás, las abuelas están disfrutando, comiendo todos los frutos que producen en la huerta, en Shuar. Hace muchos años, antiguamente, el Shuar está representado en diferentes formas y maneras de cómo poder manejar estas especies, ¿ya? Porque la mujer Shuar es desempeña un papel muy importante, que alimenta a toda la familia, es muy sabia, conoce las plantas o los frutos que van a dar en 6 meses y los frutos que van a dar al año. Entonces, son diferentes variedades y especies que realmente que cultivan es para que no les falte el alimento en la casa, en la familia. Entonces, también la mujer Shuar tiene una conexión con el Anen de la madre tierra. Ya ese el Anen y enseña a sus nietos y también comparte, ¿no? Este Anen sagrado es compartido con las mujeres en la huerta, ya para poder que las semillas no se pierdan y también las semillas comparten. Cuando una persona necesita y el otro puede recuperar otras semillas que realmente a veces se lo pierden porque no lo cultivan. Pero siempre es compartido el Shuar.
Explica que Anen es canto.
El Anen es un rito sagrado. Es para poder dar gracias cuando hay mucha cosecha, hay en abundancia. Es la niña Nungui, la diosa, que protege a la madre tierra y el bosque.
Tal vez quieres cantar, Manuel.
Ya. Bueno, también ahí es un lugar, el Shuar es un lugar donde que se reúnen todas las mujeres mayores, reunidas a las hijas, a los hijos, a los jóvenes, y ahí con el Anen, enseñando el Anen, comparten la sabiduría, transmitiendo el Anen, utilizando este tabaco, utilizando otras plantas y dándoles de beber, porque ellos cultivan muchas plantas en las huertas. Entonces ahí es el momento donde que se hace el Anen de la niña Nungui. Le podría un poquito nomás a el Anen de la niña Nungui para dar gracias por toda la cosecha, por toda la abundancia que nos ha dado el año. Nungui no wawa, nungui no wawa, huella anen dururta, huella anen dururta. Ame uchirme ka, huella anen dururta, huella anen dururta. Natsandana watipia, natsandana watipia. Esa es una súplica que se da a la niña Nungui, la madre protectora del bosque y de la madre tierra. Se pide para que la tierra no se canse, para que nosotros no sienta que el ser humano que cultiva no sienta que está maltratando a la madre tierra, porque ella lo siente y nosotros podemos sentir. Entonces, todo en el momento que se siembra, hay que bendecir, como decir, das gracias por la niña Nungui, las semillas, todas las semillas que colectas para cultivarlo, tenemos que dar gracias a la niña Nungui que nos da esta oportunidad para poder cultivarlo. Entonces, eso es muy importante. Por ejemplo, como les decía, de que el huerto, el Shuar, es donde que un niño ya nace en el huerto. Ya, la huerta es sagrada, es consagrada totalmente. Cualquiera no puede entrar sin el permiso de otra persona, porque ahí están las plantas sagradas, plantas que son alucinógenas, plantas que curan de los males del cuerpo. Entonces, por eso es tan cuidada y protegida los huertos de Shuar. Entonces es muy importante conocer también para nosotros cómo las mujeres nos enseñan, en mi cultura las mujeres mayores nos enseñan cómo colectar las plantas, cómo domesticar las plantas, como que el huerto que tú ya lo hiciste muchos años cortando los árboles, que las raíces se regeneren por sí solo, haya una regeneración natural, se cultivan plantas, como decir, cuando ya se cansa la tierra, lo cultivan otras plantas como palmas, como guavas, como caimitos, como otras plantas para que ellos den frutos y con el tiempo del cambio, que en unos años ya van a buscar otro espacio, ya es para no maltratar o no tener el espacio ahí mismo, sembrando y no tenemos buena cosecha. Entonces hay que dejarlo descansar, hay que buscar otro espacio sin destruirlo. Entonces la cosmovisión de la mujer Shuar es no dejar de que las personas puedan ir, entrar y cortar, destruir y botar las semillas. Entonces, en la cosmovisión de nosotros, de la mujer Shuar, ellos tienen las semillas, ellos son los guardianes de las semillas, ellos tienen las semillas especialmente para poder guardar por mucho tiempo y así no, pues, que falte los alimentos a la familia. Y si hay otras personas que lo necesitan, se lo da las semillas para que pueda cultivar y pueda alimentar a su familia sin destruir el bosque. Eso, y alguna otra pregunta tal vez. Es muy importante ahorita un poco una pequeña de integración, ¿no? Que el Shuar también es un lugar de la familia para integrarse ahí, reunirse, hablar de los sueños, hablar de lo que quiere planificar, qué es lo que quiere hacer para hacer una huerta, no destruir el bosque, sino utilizarlo lo que tú vas a poder aprovecharlo. Eso nomás, gracias. Yo les agradezco mucho, Anita, por tomarme en cuenta.
Muchas gracias a ti, querida Teresa, por estar hoy con nosotros. Muy, muy lindo. Me encantó escuchar tu canto, tu Aent. Precioso. Gracias, gracias por compartir el Aent con todos. Muy especial. Y ahora, a ver, ¿cómo hacemos esto desde la perspectiva del lenguaje? Tenemos a Catarina, que habla español perfecto, y la Chochi. Entonces, quizás esta sección la hacemos en español, Teresa, y yo te ayudo traduciendo al inglés para que te puedan entender los estudiantes. Y si es que hacen preguntas, te las traduzco a ti al español. Does anyone have questions for Catarina, Chochi, Teresa, who are here? You can ask in English and I'll help you translate with Teresa. And I'll translate for her.
I have a question, Anna. If you could translate it, that would be great. I'm curious about the cycles of harvest and rest for the forest, and kind of like more details on potentially like how often those happen and when it gets decided that they happen.
Básicamente, Teresa, lo que le interesa a Giovanna es saber un poco más sobre los ciclos de cosecha y de descanso. Quisiera saber cuándo ocurren, cómo deciden, cómo generan esta rotación, digamos.
Ya. Esto hacen las mujeres que diseñan su huerto. Ya, la huerta especialmente que va a dar cultivo de corto ciclo. Tenemos que dan en 6 meses. Ya, los productos producen en 6 meses. Se siembra todos los tubérculos que van a dar cosecha en 6 meses. Ya. Y esos mayormente son lianas, bejucos, tubérculos que se cosechan en los 6 meses. Ya. Hay yucas que dan en 6 meses. Una variedad de yucas se le selecciona, estaba hablando de la selección de semillas, ¿no? Y ya cuando haces tu huerto, tienes un huerto que realmente cultivas de todo. Hay un huerto especialmente para, como decimos nosotros, para matar el hambre, para tener que cosechar más rápido. Entonces son los tubérculos. Y yucas y plátano es para 1 año. Por ejemplo, ahí está en otro huerto, son para productos que dan 1 año. Por ejemplo, el plátano da 1 año, los guineos, el orito, todos esos dan en 1 año. Ya, por ejemplo, en 6 meses, antes de 6 meses o de 3 meses, el maíz, el choclo, hay variedades de especies, como decíamos, variedades de semillas. Entonces, por eso solamente las mamás, abuelas, saben seleccionar y nos enseñan a seleccionar y sembrar en el huerto de corto ciclo.
Pero creo que quieres saber en qué tiempo dejas en bosque y otra vez haces la chakra.
Eso. Pero esto como es de 6 meses, ya se cosechó y se deja. Y después puedes cambiar otro. En los 6 meses que tú ya cosechas, ya se remonta. Y ya hasta eso, a los 6 meses, hay frutos que dan en 6 meses, como la guava, otras especies. Entonces la semilla los botas en el huerto que ya aprovechaste. Entonces ya antes de los 6 meses, eso ya va a estar ya frondoso, un bosque secundario. Y ahí mismo ya cargan algunos frutos.
A ver, Teresa, para poder traducir en resumen, o sea, tú tienes estas 2 tipos de huertas principales, la de 6 meses y la de 1 año. Pero una vez que has cosechado la de 6, ya empiezas a plantar otras variedades que le reactivan, pero de otra manera.
Sí, de otra forma. Sí, poniéndole, especialmente ahí lo que se busca son por ejemplo, plantas que son leguminosas más que todo ya, las guavas, ya porque las guavas y sembramos esto, muchas plantas, como decir, también sembramos chontaduro en cantidad, sembramos unguragua, morete, porque ya esos son árboles, ya esos crecen rápido, ¿no? Entonces, hay algunos que sembramos copales, que también son ricos los frutos que se comen, ¿no? Hay algunos avíos. Son diferentes variedades que tú tienes que ver que eso tiene que remontarse, ¿ya? Entonces, no escaseas porque ya cosechaste eso en los 6 meses, no mueren totalmente rapidito, pero poco a poco ya va desapareciendo las plantas y todo, pero ya va remontando. Entonces, ya no es maltratarle al suelo, destruirle al suelo, de que realmente solamente yo he visto que las personas que no cultivan ni nada, eso va a permanecer solo hierbas, pero va a ser lento para crecer. Pero si siembras otras plantas, va a crecer muy rápido, ¿ya?
Perfecto. Another question, comment. It's interesting also, I think, that we have had, 3 fascinating visions, very different perspectives of a space that has something in common. I mean, the chakra, it's this common pool resource, if you wish, of the Quichua, this community garden that also is sacred. The Shuar, Teresa has spoken firsthand from the perspective of a woman who plants chakras in her territory. And we've also heard Katarina, who's been looking at the rubber tapers and their common pooling of resources and their communal management of land in Brazil. And of course, rubber tapers can also be settlers and migrants into Amazonia. But it feels that there's something common between these 3 examples that we're looking at. And maybe it would be interesting to, try to find out a little bit more about how that works. Would you be interested? Any questions? Yes, Peter?
Yeah, I have a question for maybe more towards Katarina and Chochi, but questions around like what are some of the biggest challenges in terms of, I don't know, I think in the studio we've been thinking of sort of like 2 systems, which is like semi-subsistence, but also semi-capitalistic. So like income derived or prosperity derived from pooled resources. So, but then also prosperity from the land itself. So I guess for Katarina, maybe the first question is like, what are some of the best strategies or methods towards actually ensuring prosperity from the land, like stays within the community and isn't just like doesn't leave the community through like manufacturing or exporting these goods, in the case of rubber in a sense. And then I guess in the other, yeah, maybe I should just start there. Sorry, but yeah.
Hi. Yeah, so let me see. So the question is that whether basically, so you mean by when you say about the value staying in the community, do you mean in terms of their socioeconomic development, or do you mean in terms of just being separated from the external world?
I mean, how, like, what in your research, what have you discovered has been like effective effective structures for the people who are actually producing the plants to like maintain the profits from their production, so that they actually can have wealth and it isn't just being lost, and so then they can educate their children and things like that. Does that make sense?
No, that's a really interesting question. Yeah. No, I just didn't understand at first. No, I think that's really interesting. So I mean, the short answer is that they haven't found many solutions. So they've tried a number of different things, but they haven't found the solutions because what they produce depends on external buyers, like everything. And so they have tried to set up cooperatives. There are quite a few external projects, both international and national and regional, to help them develop the systems and being able to trade all of that. But it is very difficult. So they haven't found a solution. That's why they are diversifying now. And some of that diversification is not necessarily good for the environment. But yes, it is tricky.
Mm. A mí me encantaría preguntarle a Teresa, ¿cómo definen los Shuar la propiedad? ¿Cómo se concibe la propiedad en la cosmovisión Shuar?
En la cosmovisión Shuar, nosotros no somos dueños de nada nuestros terrenos. Ya, nosotros no somos dueños de nada, ni de las plantas, ni del sitio, aunque así nosotros quedamos en el sitio, en el lugar. Lo que la madre naturaleza nos da un espacio es, nuestra cosmovisión es aprovechar de una manera equitativa. ¿Ya? Aprovechar de que esos saberes, nuestros saberes se transmitan de padres a nietos, a hijos. ¿Ya? Los mayores son que desempeñan un papel muy importante para educar. La educación parte mucho de la mujer Shuar, parte la educación a la hija, y el hombre tiene que dar la formación al hombre como debe. No, el hombre es artístico para poder diseñar su casa, para construir la casa. A eso él está preparado a hacer eso, pero asimismo nosotros, nuestra cosmovisión es el diseño de la huerta. La mujer, ya ella es la que está no encargada, sino nosotros somos como decir, para proteger al mismo tiempo, no queremos destruir. Por eso antiguamente nuestros antepasados venían en un lugar para colectar la semilla. Los años que viven ahí comen y lo siembran, lo dejan en sus huertos. Y eso quiere decir que nuestros hijos, porque en el sal nace en el huerto un bebé. Y ese huerto, ese lugar donde que está cultivado, tiene mucha representación dentro de la cosmovisión mítica de nosotros, la cosmovisión mítica de las plantas y la conexión el hombre. Entonces, esa es nuestra cosmovisión, es repoblar nuevamente el bosque que hemos utilizado. Pero el Anen, dando gracias a la que es la dueña protectora, que tenemos a la niña Nungui como la diosa, que nos ayuda, que no tenemos que destrozar el bosque. Eso es nuestra cosmovisión, ya, y no dañar el entorno nuestro, porque esa es nuestra vida. Ahí está nuestra salud, nuestra alimentación y el mejor vivir en armonía con la madre naturaleza. Es la cosmovisión.
Y querida Teresa, si es que el conocimiento es lo más importante, ¿no es cierto? En el mundo Shuar, el conocimiento que se transmite de a la abuela, a la hija, a la nieta, a los nietos, a los hijos. ¿Cómo se sienten las nacionalidades de la Amazonía compartiendo esos conocimientos? ¿Los quieren compartir? ¿Los quieren proteger? ¿Se han sentido desposeídos? ¿O les interesa que otros, que los colonos, los mestizos, los otros, digamos, aprendan también de ese conocimiento, de cómo vivir y cómo ser guardianes y cuidadores de la selva y no destructores? ¿Cómo te sientes con respecto a eso? ¿Cómo se sienten otros Shuar y otras nacionalidades?
Yo lo que podría decir es que no todos estamos conscientes de esto, de impartir el conocimiento cuando es de sembrar, impartir las semillas. Eso no es un problema, no es un problema, pero para otras culturas es problema, y para nosotros qué mejor sería, bueno, ¿no? Compartir esos saberes, esos conocimientos para aprender a seleccionar nuestras semillas del bosque, como nuestras abuelas. Ellos fueron los guardianes de las semillas de diferentes formas. Yo no digo solo de pepas, puede ser semilla de tubérculo, porque ellos son sabias. No es cualquiera el que está en el monte, escoge las semillas buenas para traer y domesticar, para dar el uso, reproducir esta semilla para que otros sigan de generación a generación los hijos que puedan aprovechar. Pero en las otras culturas estamos muy cerrados. ¿Qué quiero decir eso? Hay egoísmo también, ya. Muchas de las culturas están entrando en eso porque realmente para mí si es de cultivar, sembrar, todas estas cosas, enseñar cómo poder repoblar las especies, para mí no sería mezquino, ¿no? Yo puedo decir eso. Se podría hacer eso. No solamente los indígenas, todos, ¿no? Ahí no vemos ni el color, ni el blanco, ni nada, porque en este planeta que ahorita estamos ya viendo todos los cambios que hay en el mundo, estamos sintiéndolo. Si no lo hacemos eso, ya venimos nosotros desde muchas futuras generaciones, no hemos hecho nada. Y que no estamos haciendo nada, absolutamente nada, solo estamos sacando, y nadie está educando, nadie está formando. Más que todo en el país, en Ecuador, no hay una buena formación, una buena educación, no hay para poner conciencia. Eso falta mucho. La educación sale en parte de las comunidades, en parte de la familia. Eso es muy importante. Eso falta mucho en las comunidades, que no se capacitan. Ya apenas es un taller, pero un poquito. No llegan a los estudiantes porque ellos son el futuro. No llegan a las escuelas porque ellos son el futuro. Eso es lo penoso que realmente que hoy estamos viviendo en el mundo global. Es más bien estamos viendo la destrucción de nuestro planeta. Y bueno, yo a mi parecer pienso de que todos tenemos que aunar y poner una semilla, aunar el esfuerzo, pues para poder ver las mejores nuestro planeta.
Muy bien. No, increíbles las tres presentaciones. Ahora yo no quiero abusar del tiempo. I don't want to abuse their time. The three presentations have been incredible, extremely fruitful, I think, for all of us. If someone else has maybe one last question, and then we can let Catarina and Chochi and Teresa go to eat dinner. Well, Catarina, almost breakfast. Anyone? One last question? Please, Rachaya.
Wait.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, I don't. Sorry. Maybe this is more to Kochi. Just wanted. I'm very fascinated with the strategy, and I think it might be some possible applications in many places. I wonder how the restoration of these areas work, or to what extent the site could be restored. For example, are these sites just vacant sites, or contaminated, for example, or it was urbanized? I think, yeah, I wonder how the system works, and also how that a portion of restoring resources and also making income versus the portion of their own use. Yeah, so the idea with the startup is that many kinds of restoration projects can participate. So even from the most degraded one to the one I presented in Shudakta, which is not too degraded yet. So they've cleared forests, but the soils are not completely damaged. And the reserve, the national park, is right there. So that forest can come back completely, because besides for the species that the humans will bring, that we're introducing, an assisted restoration is called. The birds will bring some more, and the other animals will bring some more seeds and complete the ecosystem. But there are some other lands that take years, 20 years or more to restore. So it's hard work, and it's the only thing you have to do all day is go find the seeds, propagate the seeds, have a little nursery, treat the soil. Sometimes if the land is very, very degraded, it takes more than 2 years to just restore the soil and the microorganisms in the soil. So it does take a few years to restore, depending on what you're doing and how degraded the land is. But the idea is that any restoration project can work. And even if it's not restoration, any action that results in the restoration or conservation of the forests or any other ecosystem, because sometimes we have páramo ecosystems, which are really, really important also for the world, but they're not forests. So our idea is to incentivize people to turn into this activity or turn their lives around so they can actually do this activity and receive a payment, as you said. So that's why we're kind of being a channel or a bridge between these people who can do the restoration and the people who wants to do the restoration but can't move to the Amazon or can't move to the páramo because they don't know how to do the restoration. They don't know anything about that ecosystem, but they actually want to restore it. So connecting those two people, we call them restorers and co-restorers. So they join forces and they restore that piece of land, and that's how they make an income. So that's how money is coming into them, to the community that we're working. Now it depends on how many co-restorers know about this and decide to support this, that we can expand to other communities. So we don't want to expand to many communities and promise them an income and then have 2 or 3 people paying, right? And it's not enough. So it's a matter of finding a balance of growth, right? And scaling up little by little as more co-restorers find out, then we go to more communities and more ideas of eco actions. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. It's very helpful.
But gracias, Teresa. Thank you, Catarina. Thank you all for being here. And I look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Great presentations as well. Bye, Teresa. Adiós.
Un abrazo. Gracias, gracias.
Abrazo,
Bye, Ana. Gracias.
Chao,
Adiós.
chao.
Bye, bye.
Bye.